Welcome to the wonderful world of teaching, where I share practical tips and tricks for new teachers or veteran teachers on how to find magic and plug it back into your classroom. And today I wanted to share Spark 1 in my Quiet Magic of Classroom Management series. And this is going to focus on routines and procedures. This is something that's often shared about in our credential program, but it's not explicitly taught or even the reason why it's so important to have routines and procedures in your classroom. What I've recognized over the years is the reason behind the need for this and why it creates that quiet magic in our classrooms. We love that feeling of being able to walk in, our classrooms are working, there's harmony, everybody's learning, nobody's shouting out, I don't have to raise my voice. Everyone just knows what to do and how to do it, right? That's kind of the dream. But over the course of my time working as a teacher, but also just listening to others, is how stressful it is in the classroom and how it's hard to manage student behavior. Students are out of control. There's so much going on. They're yelling at you or each other, and it's just chaos, and it's exhausting to have to do that. And so when we create structure, it doesn't only help our students feel less stressed and anxious, but it also helps us too. There's a routine, there's a procedure, there's expectations that are there. And so that really helps create that calm and that sense of, okay, everybody knows what they're doing. Okay, let's get started with our learning. When we don't have these procedures and routines, it's wild. That's just the best way to do it. Just kind of, okay, I have to address this. It's like putting out those fires constantly. And that does get exhausting, and it is. And there's reasons why teachers feel burnt out and feel overwhelmed at the end of the day. And it's because a lot of these routines and procedures aren't implemented in their classroom with consistency and with clarity. And that is what's so important about these. First, let's talk about the difference between routines and procedures. Routines are something that students are doing or you're doing. It's an action, kind of a series of steps that students are following. Procedures are kind of the how-to, the explanation, the step-by-steps that kind of helps with those routines running smoothly. So routine can be something that's a little bit larger, whereas our procedures, that's really going to be like the step-by-step action that students are doing. Shared a little bit, structure does affect learning. We know what it feels like when we know that there's a test day. And even though we know that a test is coming, there's still that sense of, I don't know what's going to be on the test, the unpredictability, and that can cause stress and anxiousness. And when students are walking into your classroom and they don't know what to expect, they don't know how you're going to come off to the class, if you're going to be in a bad mood or a good mood, that can cause stress for students. That affects their learning. It affects them feeling motivated to complete work. And so when you're eliminating that and you're creating routines and structures, it eases students and you in the process too, because everybody knows what they're expected to do. And when you don't do it, there's kind of a consequence that comes from that. And it just keeps it very routine and easy for students to follow through. And because of this, having routines and procedures eliminates that need to be, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, right? We hear that all day long. What are we supposed to be doing right now? What should I be doing right now? And when we don't address that, or when there's not an action, students continue to ask that or interrupt. They have misbehavior. And so creating those clear, consistent expectations eliminates that need to stop and pause and re-explain. Some common routines to start and reflect and implement in your classroom, if you don't already have these, is arrival. What does it look like when students are coming into your classroom? I mean, really, your whole day should be structured. Like everything has a routine, a procedure. When students, they have a question, how does that get handled? Obviously, there's kind of the norm in a classroom that students raise their hand, but if that's not been explained, that needs to be addressed. What happens when students finish early, transition time, lining up, or getting ready to leave? Those are some common routines that we find in classrooms. Procedures, something that's always important when you're creating a procedure is the tone or the sound of what's happening. How do you want this action or this to take place? What should students be doing? What should the teacher be doing? And then also think about location. Where is this taking place? Do students need to do this at their desk? Is there a location where materials need to go? Are they following kind of a route in order to get something? So all of those things are usually addressed in procedures. So I don't know about you, but when I think of a sample routine, it's lining up. And that one I feel like is a very basic and essential kind of thing. Now, something I'll explain a little bit more is the expectation that we have for lining up versus the routine that we explain to students on how to line up. So when you think of a routine for lining up, right, students are in a straight line, one behind the other, hands are to themselves, whether that's by their sides or behind their backs or in front folded. Students have their eyes looking forward so they know where they're going. They're not talking, so right, the sound quiet, they're quiet, and they're listening. So right, that's kind of the routine. Now what happens often is that we don't practice this enough and we just expect that students will do this. And when we expect, we're going to end up disappointed, and I'll explain that a little bit more too. Now, a sample procedure might take place during transition time. So when a procedure is something, right, you're explaining to them, the routine would be them actually doing it. So transition time, when I was in the classroom, I'd open a music box. When students heard that sound, they'd stop what they were doing. They would listen. Okay, it's time to clean up. Okay, I'm going to turn on this song, and when the song's over, we're going to already be at our next station. So I taught younger students in transitional kindergarten and kindergarten. And so oftentimes I would open the music box. That would be their cue to freeze. They'd listen to the next directions and they'd tidy up, push in their chairs, and we would sing a song typically while they kind of moved. And what I've noticed is when I'm singing or they're singing or they're producing sound, that eliminates them from talking or shouting. We're all doing the same thing at the same time. And that kind of helps keep that consistency and flow and the routine going smoothly. And when structure falls apart, this is where we get discouraged as teachers because we feel like our students should know this by now. It's the middle of the year. We've practiced this multiple times. I've been expecting this. But if we're not expecting it perfectly how we've taught it, then we aren't being consistent. We're now allowing students to occasionally talk, for students to be tapping on each other, and then it continues because we've not addressed it. When we line up, this is how we line up. If we don't, let's practice it again. And that's a good routine to just have. I'm not going to get upset when my students don't follow it. We're just going to practice it again. It gives you an opportunity. This is my procedure. This is what we're going to do as a class. And it's great to share that with them. When we don't line up, we're going to practice it again. And that keeps it consistent and retrain them. We have to remember too that our students aren't practicing these skills at home. And while we want our kids to come to school with good manners and good behavior, there's not 30 plus kids that they're having to practice line up for. Like there's skills that are not taught or even can be taught at home that often can be seen in the classroom. And while, yes, we recognize what good behavior looks like and that our parents should also be teaching that at home, it doesn't always transfer for some of our students. And we need to just recognize that and be, okay, when you're with me, this is how we line up and these are my expectations for you. As a reminder, anytime you're teaching a procedure or routine, focus on consistency. Repeated direction, students often need it repeated multiple times. And while this is best taught at the beginning of the year, it's not awful to start now and to start teaching it. We know after any break that students are coming back, we're having to reteach these because students aren't in the habit of doing them every day. They've now been on break, so we need to re-practice that. If you already have that expectation and recognize, oh, my students are going to have to relearn this, I'm going to have to reteach it, there's not this disappointment that, again, I have to reteach this. You already know you're going to have to do it. So think of your expectations too of students. Don't have such high expectations if you've not taught them explicitly how to do it, and continue to encourage that behavior and consistency. And sometimes it's all year long that you're doing it, and just recognize that. That's something I'm going to teach all year long. And when you let go of students' responsibility to have to do it and you recognize and own it, that I have to continue to teach this, it's my classroom, and if I want it to run a certain way, I have to continue to be consistent and repeat directions and reinforce the routines that I want to happen in my class, there's not as much disappointment and frustration for you. So again, just a reminder, as you're expecting behavior of students, it needs to be clearly stated to them. Don't expect something that you've not taught. If you are having your students line up and you've never shown them how to line up, and I get it, that should be common sense. But if you are expecting something and students aren't doing it, there's an opportunity there for you to communicate clearly what you want and to practice that behavior. You can't expect somebody to react or do something if you've not clearly told them how to do it. And we know that as educators too. Anytime we're teaching something, we can't expect a product if we've not clearly explained the directions of what is needed for students. Just think of and reflect. Think about your classroom. Think about the areas where things aren't clear, there's points of frustration, or maybe it's just taking a long time to complete a routine or procedure. This might be in the morning or at the end of the day, or maybe some transition time. Think of where you could, one area, you don't need to pick your whole classroom, but one area to just focus on, and think of all the steps that are needed. What are the things that you want students to be able to do, and write it out as in a step-by-step. That's where you have to teach that procedure. If it's not clear, if things are messy, if students are constantly questioning, where does this go? Where do I put this? Where do I put this? That's a great opportunity to pause and to reteach everything. Okay, we're all going to practice it. And it does take up instructional time, but by teaching it, you're eliminating all that extra time that you're having to address and put out small fires in the morning or in the afternoon or during transitions. With that, I hope that you found a quick takeaway, that you're able to reflect on an area where you can maybe revamp one of your procedures in your classroom. Or if you're a new teacher, write down some of these. What do you want your classroom to look like? How do you want it to flow? And be very explicit in all of the steps that you want your students to be able to follow. And you'll have to practice those steps with your students and expect it to be done multiple times and throughout the year. If you like this, please feel free to click like. You can comment or subscribe and share it with anybody that's in a similar situation as you. With that, I'll see you at the next one.